I'm going to make the shower bigger. We have this great big bathroom, but they put in a tiny shower. So I'm going to make the shower bigger because there's so much space between the shower wall and the toilet. So why not have a bigger shower? So today I tore up the ceiling in the bathroom under this, and when I did that, I noticed the toilet's leaking. So right now I'm going to fix the toilet. Plumbing is dumb. Well, that's far worse than I was expecting. The flange is broken, and the wood is, I don't know if I'd call that wood anymore. We may have made compost out of our floor. Let's look at it from the bottom. Well, that whole floor is going to have to go. But at least it drips right down onto a light fixture. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the previous owner did not hire an electrician to do this. There's just wires everywhere. All right, so that light fixture's got to go. That whole drain needs to be replaced, and the floor needs to be replaced. I'm sad. I've had better days. This opened up a great opportunity. If I move my toilet from there, the rotted out poop floor, to here, then I have so much space to make the shower huge. Look at how much space is there. Let's do it. Before you cut tile, always remove your wife's plants from the room, because all of the dust can land on the leaves and can actually suffocate the plants. It almost reaches. I have to get an extension cord. I really should have an extension cord on every floor. Every time I need to get something, all my tools are in the basement. Bathroom's on the 3rd floor. You see, you shouldn't be able to see through that. That's not good. This looks so much better. I did chip a tile while I was cutting it. I'm just going to super glue that back on, even though it should be covered up by the toilet. Now that right there is a thing of beauty. I'll build a box around it and sheetrock it in. It's not like we don't already have these things in the house. I made a new sewer line. I dry fit it and made these marks so everything lines up and glued it all together. And now I just need to glue it in place. That's the old drain pipe, and there's where it's going to go now. Look how perfectly that lined up. The new flange is level with the floor. The old flange was about 1.5 inches below the floor, which I think is what caused the problem in the first place. I'll still put a flange extender on it to bring it up about 1/4 inch, but with that O-ring, I don't think it's going to matter. I took a plastic bag, filled it with insulation, and shoved it in there so I don't have sewage gases coming up, and then stick a bucket over the top of it. I need to move my water line from there to here, but since this floor needs to be replaced, I need to replace the floor first, and I went ahead and shut the water off and cut that. This could have been really bad, like fall through the floor while you're trying to poop bad. This is not bad at all. The floor joists look great. It's really just this one board that was rotted. I'll take it out another 16 inches that way to the next joist. I decided to install the new water line to the toilet on this side of the joist. That way, when I put a new tile in here, I just need to cut a notch out of it instead of having to drill a hole through it. The AC condenser electric runs right through here, so I brought it out as far as I can to get some distance between the water and the electric. And of course, I shut it off before I did any drilling or cutting around it. This is the new water line to the toilet, and it's all dry fit, which means it's not glued together. I'm gonna mark on here where it lines up, so when I glue it, I can get it all lined up again. Purple primer goes on everything that I'm going to glue. It's real stainy, so I put this foil down because it'll stain everything. I put glue on it, and then I just line up my lines, and I want to rotate it as I go. So those lines are lined up. C goes to C. I know those go together. It's all glued together and ready to attach. It's a tight fit in here. Sometimes I'm happy that I'm a compact human. That's glued in place. Now all the plumbing is plumbed. Everything is ready for the toilet to be installed, but I'm gonna clean up this mess first. I still have some cleaning up to do, but this is definitely better. I'm finally ready to destroy the shower. It's taken longer than expected because I ordered a shower basin and it came with a huge crack in it. And you know, a lot of hardware stores will say that they have one, but then when you get there, they don't have it. But I finally have everything I need. The basin, the surround walls, lumber, and the doors. Whenever you're going to be breaking tile, all the little pieces, the shards that fly off, are extremely sharp. The last time I removed a shower like this, I was not careful enough. So wear eye protection, gloves, long sleeves, coveralls, boots, all of it. But before I start smashing the tile, I'm going to open up this wall and see if there's anything hiding in there. There was something hiding in there. A vent pipe. Why would you run a vent pipe in this silly little wall and then over? Why not just have it come up? I don't understand people. I cut it underneath the floor and I cut it here and I plugged it up because that is connected to the sewer and I don't want sewer gases coming up. I cut off both water lines under the floor so this isn't attached to anything. So every drain pipe needs to have a vent. Have you ever taken a straw, stuck it in water, put your thumb over the top and then lifted it out and it pulls all that water out? That's exactly what your drain pipes would do that come from your toilet, your sinks, your shower, if they didn't have vents. It's essentially like poking a hole in the side of the straw so that all of the water can run out and air can go into that pipe. But in this case, that hole has a pipe coming out of it that then goes up and out through the roof. But now the shower is ready for smashing. I'm gonna save this one. I can use that. That's nice. Water break. I was able to save quite a bit of tile that I can use to fix that hole where the toilet used to be. Your eye protection really should be goggles. Oops. There we go. Got it. Hey look, I found the main vent, and I'm glad they labeled it so I don't confuse it with the main vent, which apparently goes to the state of Maine. This is something brand new I've never seen before. So this back wall ends at 6 feet, and this wall in front of it begins, and it's just floating there. So I'm guessing it's held up by like some nails at the top. Yeah, we're not gonna do it that way. So I wedged a 2x4 in here to hold that up. And that vent pipe that we cut earlier, instead of going right here into the main vent, it goes that way into the wall, up into that little thingy, and then back over here into the main vent. So we're just gonna run that under the ground into this pipe and not do any weird wall things. Let's fix the floor. I've marked off how much of this tile I need to remove. And I'll show you my favorite way to cut tile. I have a diamond blade on this saw, and I have it set so that it'll just barely cut into the tile. Protect your eyes, your lungs, and your hair. Once I cut a little trough in the tile, I can fill it with water. That'll stop it from getting too hot, and it'll also stop it from producing as much dust. I cut the whole line about halfway through the tile, but now my cut is full of water and I can plunge deeper and it'll be much less messy. I can tell that I've cut all the way through the tile because the water's run out the bottom. I'm still happy about the way any of this floor looks, so I'm just gonna remove as much as I can. I've taken out all of the floor that I'm going to, and I've got two 2x4s holding up that little piece of wall there. Now let's build a new floor. That just looks so much safer to walk on. Why is it squeaky? That's what's squeaky. I didn't build that. Measure once, cut once, because I wrote it down. I won't know if I measured this right until I cut it and get it upstairs and in place. And I only bought one, so I'd have to make a trip to the store. I'm sure I got it right. Is it perfect? Yes. Yes, it is. Today is a masonry day. Woohoo! This brick up here looks good. This brick down here looks bad. All of that 150-year-old mortar is going to be covered up when I put the wall in to build the shower. So I could just leave it, but I know that every time I take a shower, I'm just going to be thinking about that brick. So let's do it. I have a great tool made just for this. Screwdriver. See, it comes out pretty easily. Jump. 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 And this is a long screwdriver. That's why I'm doing this. I got the old mortar out, and really it's not that bad. Now let's talk about mortar. Type N mortar, you can buy it at the store. It's cement, lime, and sand. But Type N mortar is very hard. It'll crack historic brick. Historic brick is very soft. Type K is historic mortar. It has this ratio of cement, lime, and sand. It's very, very soft. But you can't just go to the store and buy Type K mortar. So instead, I'll use Type N mortar with added lime and sand. I know someone's gonna do that math and be like, that's not actually Type K mortar that you're making. You're right, I'm making a mortar that's a little bit harder. It'll actually be somewhere between Type O and Type K mortar. Masonry folk fight about this stuff all the time, but I promise it'll be okay. Type N mortar, sand, and lime, all mixed up. Now I just need to add water. How did our dog manage to poop right on the handle? Remind me again why I have a dog. Clean tools are happy tools. Dry brick will soak water up really fast, and it'll suck all of the water out of your mortar. So you want to get it wet before you start pointing it. These piping bags make it so much easier. Ooh, it's thick. I piped it in like I'm building a gingerbread house and made sure I got all of those deep holes, and then I'll take this tool and make it look nice. Now I never have to think about this part of the wall again. Don't look at me like that. You know what you did. Oh, you're so cute. All right, I gotta do something about this weird little floating wall. I'm gonna put this 4x4 post right in the corner, and I got my speed square. If you plan on building anything and you don't have a speed square, get a speed square. It will save you so much time. Whoop. Zoop. I have that post roughly in place, but it has to be exact. I need this to be level. It's not quite there. That's where I want it to be. I also need it to be exactly 32¼ inches to the tile. That way I know my tub is going to fit, everything is level, everything is square, that post is in the right spot. Now I can build a wall that goes this way and a wall that goes that way. It can all be squared with that post. And if that post is in the right spot, I know my shower basin and the shower walls, they're all gonna fit. I also lined the wood up so that later this will hopefully look seamless and look like this was all built as one wall. I cut my plates for the top and bottom to the correct length. And now I'm gonna measure where the studs go. On tape measures, they have this spot at 16. That's my center of my studs. There's another red one here at 32. It's so nice that they do that for you. When I measure how tall this wall is going to be, my studs need to be 3 inches shorter than that because the plate at the top and the plate at the bottom are each 1.5 inches wide. This tape measure is 3 inches wide, which makes it perfect for measuring that height. If I measure it like this with the tape measure on the ground, it automatically subtracts that 3 inches. So I need to cut them at 84¾ inches. Instead of measuring each stud individually, just measure one. Now it's easy to cut all of these to exactly the same length. Ta-da! Line your studs up on center and drive some nails in. When I'm driving in nails, I always try to remember if you hit it straight, it'll go in straight. So if I'm driving in a nail and I accidentally hit it to the side, don't try to correct it, just hit it straight. It'll go in straight. I don't really like painting walls, but my wife's really good at it. She's putting dry lock on the brick above where the shower is so that we don't get brick dust that falls down into the shower. Oh, but you shouldn't paint historic brick. Shut up, Matt. You're doing a great job, hon.
It's making my thumb hurt.
Now I'm going to frame out the wall that's going to have the water running through it. This diagram tells me it should be 5.9 inches between where my hot and cold water come out. The drain in the shower is 15.5 inches from the wall, so the wall is going to be over here. And that tells me this is my center line. So I measured 3 inches out on either side. That gives me close to my 5.9 inches. And then I need room for my water hammer arresters, and I'll have studs on either side of that. This way I know those water lines are going to fit between those two studs. Water hammer arresters regulate the water pressure in your pipes. While the water's running, the water's coming through here and it's going pretty fast. And then if you suddenly shut the water off, all that water in the pipe is already moving and it wants to keep moving. And so it'll increase the pressure in the pipe. What this does is it has this section that's full of air and that water is able to push up into here, and this takes all of that pressure instead of my plastic PVC pipes taking all of that pressure. It also stops your pipes from making loud clunky sounds when you turn the water off. Look at this wood. Ugh, I can't use this. This is better, but still pretty bad. For reference, this is one of the studs that I tore out. You see how much straighter that is? So much better. Those boards were straight when I bought them. A while back, this dummy passed a law that we can't import wood from Canada because we got plenty of trees to cut down right here in America. The problem is that it forced the lumber industry in the United States to speed up, to put out a lot more lumber a lot faster to try to keep up with demand. And wood warps as it dries, so the longer you let it dry before you cut it into lumber, the straighter it's going to stay. That means that the faster they produce lumber, the more it's going to warp. I have enough wood to finish this project, but I can't use this wood. And now that I think of it, these have this Made in USA stamp, but they aren't stamped with the name of the mill. I grew up in a mill town, and they always stamped Cascade Lumber with Cascade Lumber. And whenever I see that Made in USA but no other company name, it makes me wonder, is this the prison industry? Did prisoners make this wood? I looked it up, and yep, the US lumber industry uses prison labor. You literally cannot build anything in the United States without slavery. Well, this video is getting long, so I'm just gonna crawl into a hole and take all this wood back. I got a shower wall in. Look at that. Nice. I noticed that this air duct now blows right into the shower. Let's move it. I took the end off, and I'll put it way down there. I couldn't get my Sawzall all the way around because the ceiling's in the way. I'll do the rest with tin snips. Next, I'm gonna clean that up, and I'll take that down. Well, that's a cute little thing. But I don't like that it's pointed right down, and a lot of that heat will be close to that wall, and the wall will absorb a lot of the heat and it wastes energy. So I'm gonna show you how you can re-angle it. These corner pieces are made so that you can spin them, and it'll change the direction that it goes. It took some finagling, but now it points out into the space, and it'll be better for heating this space. And when I say heating, I mean cooling, because this is the third floor. Most of the heat comes up from underneath. I'm gonna take a minute to talk about how cool this tool is. This is a ratcheting screwdriver that goes inside my Leatherman. It goes in the spot that usually has a screwdriver. And for Christmas, Kirsten got me this carrying case. It goes right in there, and this holds all of the Leatherman bits. I got both walls in, this one and that one. Now it's time for the moment of truth. Does the shower pan fit? I'm a little bit nervous about that. Yay! Perfect fit! Oh. I am very, very happy with that. I said in a previous video, if I got that post level and square, then I would get all of it level and square, and I did. Ooh. Ah. I'm using my big drilly drill. Perfect. I hate walls that wiggle like this, so I'm gonna run a 4x4 up into the ceiling. I wouldn't need to do that for this shower because I'm gonna use a glass door, but if anyone ever uses a tension rod here, it'll push on this wall and it just destroys it. Someday someone might want to remove the kit shower and put in a tile shower, and they'll be happy that this wall is solid. I personally will never do that because I hate cleaning tile showers. I made a hole in the ceiling and I just screwed a 2x4 here so I can see about where it's gonna hit. Looks about right. I can use that to measure the distance from the center of the beam to the floor, and so I know about what angle I need to make a cut at. I'll need to cut it in 1 3/16 of an inch. And with my speed square, I can see that I need to cut it at about 61 degree angle. Let's go cut a beam. To get that 61 degrees, I'm measuring to 29 degrees on here. And that's the line I'm gonna cut. wife and I were taking a shower the other day, and only one of us could go under the water at a time, and the other one had to be cold. So I think you're right. Y'all are right. We need 2 shower heads in our shower. I put the plumbing for one side in already. It needs to be 6 inches apart, so this is exactly 6 inches. It needs to be 15.5 to center. That's good. And it's level. If you watched my previous video, you know those studs are in the place that they are to fit this plumbing inside. I was not intending on putting plumbing on the other side, so I'm gonna have to figure this out. I did measure how high it's gonna be, so it's the same height as the other side, and where the center of the new faucet will be, and it lands right there. So I'll have one pipe on one side, one pipe on the other. It should be okay. So I have my center point, and I measured 1.25 inches up from that, and I made a line all the way across so that I can have a 2x4 here and another 2x4 on this side, and I can get the tops of them to be level. I measured 3 inches over, and I made this line here. And then I use this little groove on my speed square to hold my Sharpie while I move it across to make this line that goes across there. That gives me an exact spot for my top screw, and then the bottom screw will go on that line. That puts it exactly 39 inches up from the ground and 3 inches from my center point. I cut my second piece of wood, and I can show you how I make this line that goes across. So I stick it in that first slot there, and I just slide this over. Oop, hit my saw there. And that gets me that line. They are 39 inches from the floor. They're exactly 6 inches apart. I can just shove these on here. There we go. And now that is directly across from that. Directly below this, I made 2 holes for the pipe to go down into. And you can see I made it right on the edge of this 2x4. And the reason I did that is because I know that there's a floor joist right here. And if I look in this one, I just barely missed the floor joist on that. That's perfect. And this one, I kind of cut into the floor joist just a little bit, but there's plenty of space there for the pipe to go through. Next, I'll cut a couple holes over here, but first I need to look under there and see if there's anything I need to watch out for. So I can see my shower plumbing straight up there. This is where those pipes will come down, and there is a vent pipe right there. There's a floor joist right there against the wall, and I should be able to run that pipe between the floor joist and the vent pipe. So that tells me where I need to drill my holes. That's where my shower drain is going to come down. And I knew once that shower drain is in, it's going to be a lot harder to get to this water line. So I went ahead and brought the hot water line down and over, and that's where it connects to the hot water right there. I'm going to connect that later. I'm going to do the drain pipe first. So that way I won't have to try to work around the drain pipe to do that hot water plumbing. Cold water is going to come down over here. I should still be able to get to that with no problems, so I'm just going to do that afterwards. This is my old drain pipe that I just need to move over about 16 inches. The problem is, this is the only place I could cut it and maybe have something to glue to, but I don't feel real great about that. And all of these fittings are so close together that I have to replace this whole section of pipe. And back here I have my old vent pipe that is just cut off. And there's a spot where it can tie into the main vent right there. So I'm going to extend that over. But first, I'm going to go ahead and install the shower basin. But when I look at the floor here, I can see it's not very level. And when I put my big level, I can see that not only is it not level, it's not even a little bit flat. So I'm going to need to put down a mortar bed to float that shower basin on top of. All right, so I mixed up some of this mud bed mix, and I put it in 2 buckets because it's easier to carry 2 buckets that are half full than 1 bucket that's all the way full. As always, you gotta clean my tool. Now I can take this mortar and I'm just gonna pour it in. I'll take my trowel and I'll smear it around. All right, so I got this in here as level as I could get it. Now I'm gonna bring in my shower basin. To get the shower level, I'm using a rubber mallet. Don't use a metal hammer. So this is the piece that I'm gonna have to rebuild. This is the pipe that I removed, and that's the pipe I'll be replacing it with. You can see it's a bigger pipe system. This is the main drain pipe that comes from the toilet. This is going to be the shower drain, and then this is the new vent pipe that comes out. I've shown before how I mark these where I put a line showing where it's supposed to line up. That K lines up with K. And I had someone before ask, well, a pipe is a circle, so it shouldn't matter, right? But if I don't line those lines up, then that angle is going in the wrong direction. And it's not going to line up with the pipe I'm trying to connect it to. Up in 3 separate pieces that I'll attach together while I'm in the ceiling. I glued that first section of pipe in, and you can see right here where the old pipe and the new pipe meet. They just butt up against each other. And I have this sleeve that I can put glue there, put the sleeve in the middle, and then spin it, and it'll spread that glue evenly, and I'll be able to glue that in place. I'm done with the waistline. The toilet is over there, and then the main waistline comes to right here. That goes over to the shower, and then there's a vent right there, and that way it goes to the bathtub. It's not pretty. A plumber wouldn't write all of those letters and lines all over it. They just glue it as they go and it'd be much faster, but I'm not a plumber. And this way I know it fits. A good professional would have done a better job. But hey, it's done. So right now this P-trap is full of air. It doesn't have any water in it. So sewer gases that come up, anytime you're dealing with a waistline, sewer gases can come up, and there's nothing stopping them from going through this pipe, from filling this section of pipe up and going up into our bathroom. So to stop that from happening, I'm just gonna take some water and pour it down the drain. And after I do that, I'm gonna check up here for any moisture, see if any water's coming through, and it looks like it's good to go, no leaks. I also went ahead and flushed the toilet, and I'll check here for any water coming out, and I don't see any. Ta-da! So I put in one sidewall. Now I need to make holes in it where the plumbing goes. Since I can get to the back of this one, I can just do this. And that'll tell me where to make my holes. Perfect. I think that looks good. Now this side I can't mark from the back, so I'm gonna have to do it a different way. I'm gonna try something and see if it works. For those that don't know, I'm a professional artist, so I grabbed some oil paint from my studio. This is cerulean blue. I picked this color because it's pretty. I'll just take a little bit of that on my finger and put it on this fitting, on each one. Now I'll put my shower wall on and press it against that, and hopefully it'll make an impression. All right, the shower wall's on there. I'm just gonna press against here. I should be able to feel where that is. There we go. It didn't make a perfect impression, but it's good enough that I can stick a fitting on here, get it lined up, and know where to make my hole. Battery's dead. This is why I have lots of batteries. That one's dead too! Oh my gosh. Battery number 3. Are you kidding me? Is my drill dead? This goes on the end of the pipe fitting. The shower fixture comes with plumber's tape, but I hate plumber's tape, so I'm gonna use something else instead. This is sealant for pipe threads. It's a thick gloopy paste, and I'm just gonna put it on the threads. Just brush it on there, make sure it gets down in there. And this is gonna do the same thing that the plumber's tape would do. And I'm gonna tighten that down with vice grips that have cardboard in them. I went ahead and installed one of the shower fixtures. I'm very excited. So one fixture is in. I'm going to install the exact same fixture on the other side. I'm installing shower doors today, but I've never installed shower doors before, so I don't know what I'm doing. I have everything out. I've read all the instructions, so in theory I know what to do. I'm measuring in 2 3/4 inches, and I'm marking this with a dry erase marker because I don't know if this is going to be covered up or not. And so if it's not covered up, I can just wipe that off. The reason I'm putting my mark here instead of centering it here is because I know that there's another piece that's going to be 1.5 inches in from that, and that'll bring it just inside this lip here. I know that because I read all the instructions before I started instead of just reading the first step. Always read ahead so you can plan ahead. I lined this template up, And I made sure it's perfectly level, taped it in place, and it gives me 2 spots where to put my screw holes. Do the same on the other side. These little anchors go in those holes. You can just shove them in. These brackets are what will hold up the shower door. The instructions say to tighten it by hand with a screwdriver, but that takes a lot of time. So instead, I just make sure my drill is on 1 and that this is turned all the way down to 2. That way it won't have that much torque and it'll stop when it needs to stop. I can go nice and slow. And then I can finish tightening it with the screwdriver. So this is the top bar. I measured the space between the 2 brackets it's going to hang on, and I subtracted 1/4 of an inch. Rarely do I measure twice. This is one time that I did measure twice. These inside rollers slip in there, and then this cap goes on the end. Next, I line this up with my brackets, and I can slip this over. And that's what holds it on. It has little screws on the top that I need to tighten down. Now this is where that 2 3/4 inches that I measured in are very important. The instructions said to move in 2.5 inches, but I added 1/4 of an inch because I need to have 1.5 inches to this mark here, which is where this piece goes. And it's coming right next to this ridge right here. If I had only come in 2.5 inches, then this would land right on that ridge. I can't actually install it there. I didn't follow the instructions, but it'll fit right. This dam strip is held on with silicone, so I'll take a utility knife and cut that tip off at an angle. I want a pretty small bead, so that's enough. And then my gun has this jabby bit that I can shove in there and it'll puncture. There's a foil seal in there. So now I have it in my gun, and when I pull the handle, it'll come out the end. I put a line of silicone on the whole thing. Now I'm going to install it. And I want to get this in the right spot and then push it straight down. There we go. There are these little end caps that you put silicone in, and they just slide on the end here, all the way up to the edge. I made a line that's exactly halfway across, and that tells me where this piece goes. It goes against this dam, and it just has 1 screw that goes right in the middle. This is prepared just like the sidewalls were, and then this gets silicone at the bottom of it. And then, need to get it in the right spot, that goes right there. And then there's this little plastic piece that I put some silicone on, and that'll cover up that screw. Which door is my inside door? It has more space between the holes. And I push this plastic water diverter onto the bottom of it. These rolling brackets are what that's going to hang on. And this little plastic piece will go through the glass and onto here. And then there's a nut that goes on the end. And while I'm installing it, I'll rest the glass right here in this notch. These top rollers have a little hook there that hooks on there. I'll install the outside glass to these the same way that I installed the inside glass. This rubber magnetic strip just pushes onto the door on the edge. The way that glass hits there, it's not perfectly level, but I can fix that. I can turn these little screws and that'll raise the glass up or down on each side. Now it's nice and flush against there. On each side, I'm going to mark the top, that inside edge, and the bottom. I line the side rail up on those marks, and I can mark where my screw holes go. So right here. Once that's screwed in, this magnet strip just slides down in there. I cut the magnet strip down a little bit, and then there's this little clear plastic cap that pops in there. Ugh. It doesn't go very well, so rubber mallet. There we go. Every time I use my rubber mallet, Kirsten says, "Aren't you glad I talked you into getting that rubber mallet?" But in reality, when I was buying it, she said, "What do you need a rubber mallet for?" "For rubber mallet stuff, obviously." And she's like, "What, you're going to be checking people's reflexes?" Next, I put this rubber guard on here, and I cut this section out so that it can go around that bar. The handle screws on. There's a screw hole right there. And then there's a little black cap that you push over it that hides the screw. My last step is to screw these on the outside. All I have left is to put some silicone around the edges and the shower's done. We've started using our new shower, and my wife thought it would look nicer if she got these bottles so everything matches on her side. And my bottles all match too, so, you know, my side looks nice too. I'm ready to finish the walls, but first, I need to replace the tiles where the toilet used to be. But first, I'm going to remove this tile that I broke, so I can replace it at the same time I replace the other tiles. While I was working on the plumbing up there, I dropped my Sawzall off my ladder and it broke this tile. Luckily, when I tiled this bathroom, I bought an extra box that I store in the basement, just in case this happens. One of the interesting things about my house is that it was built before indoor plumbing was common. So this bathroom here is what we call a lean-on. It's actually a separate building that just leans against the main house. So this is the main house, this is the lean-on. The lean-on moves away from the main house about 1 millimeter every 2 or 3 years. It's fixable, but it would be a very expensive fix. So instead, I just fill the gap every once in a while. But when I put this tile in, I made sure that there wasn't a tile that went across where the main floor meets the lean-on floor, because I know that it's gonna crack here. That way, when it does crack, I only have to replace the grout, and I shouldn't have to replace the tile. But this one's broken, so we'll replace the whole thing. If you're gonna be breaking tile, protect your eyes, protect your lungs, protect your arms, wear long sleeves. Ceramic shards are extremely sharp, and it's a good idea to cover your hair, especially if your hair looks like mine does today. Before I remove the tile, I'm gonna remove the grout around the tile. There are tools made for doing this. Oscillating tools work really well. But I'm gonna use a circular saw with a diamond blade, because that's what I have. Now let's break the tile. If I was a fish and you met me, you'd say, what a cute fish. The reason I want to bust it is so that I can pry this up from the inside instead of prying it up from the outside. Because if I pry it up from out here, I'm putting a lot of pressure on the tile next to it, and I don't want to crack the next tile over. Well, I did end up breaking another tile. And I went ahead and removed the grout between the two floors. The mortar came out in these little square tiles, and they remind me of game pieces. And that reminds me in Madaba when they found the mosaic tile floor. Apparently in like the 1960s, people found some kids playing with all of these little colored tiles, and they're like, where'd you get those? And they're like, oh, we got them from the abandoned church. They were destroying 1,300-year-old art. This is a tile saw. I actually traded a painting for this saw a while back, and I've been pretty happy with it. The way this works is it has a diamond blade right here, and the basin is full of water, and there's a little pump right here that'll pump water through this hose, and it shoots water right where you're gonna cut. I can clamp the tile in place, and it cuts through it like butter. Mark out where this pipe comes in. This carbide-tipped hole saw can cut through the tile, but you'll want to get it wet, so it goes in nice and easy. If things start to get a little too hot, just cool it down with some cold water. I mean, technically, yes, this is cutting through there, but I want to get this done today. Well, it's not pretty, but it's good enough. One more piece to cut. That'll work. All right, let's lay some tile. I'll go ahead and plop some mortar down. I'm going to push that down into these cells. Now that I have a nice surface for everything to adhere to, I'll put some more mortar down, and then I'll spread that like this. After that, I'm going to spread just a thin coat on the back of the tile. I put this first tile down, and I'm going to kind of squish it around. That'll get it really adhered on there. I want to try to get it level with the tiles around it. I'll go ahead and put the second tile down. Just drop it in place. It looks like it's a little bit lower than the tiles around it, so I'm going to pull that up. I added some mortar and switched to a trowel that makes higher ridges, so we'll see how this goes. Now it's sitting a little bit higher than the tiles around it, so I can squish it down, and if I need to, I can use this rubber mallet that my wife talked me into getting. I'm going to let that mortar set for a couple of days, and then I'll put the grout in. I'm pretty happy with that. That'll work. Don't forget to wipe down any plants that might have gotten dusty. I'd be especially sad if I hurt my son's jade plant that he's been growing in this Lego pot for about 2 years now. I took this piece of grout from the tile that I'm replacing, and so I'm here at the store trying to match this grout. That's pretty close, but it looks a little bit light. There we go. That's probably the same grout. Normally I mix cement and grout and all that stuff here in my backyard, but yesterday the hose just broke. It just gave up. So I guess I'm doing it in the front yard. This flower bed here is one of the first things that I made out of brick, and I didn't do a great job. A house up the street fell down and I just went up and snagged some brick and made this flower bed. In fact, it was this house. And 3 years later, if I ever need a brick, they're just around. And if anybody wants to be my neighbor, I'm sure the city will give it to you if you ask nice enough. But look at these great bricks that are just being wasted. That one's like perfect. I'm taking it home. I'm just gonna put that right here and save it for a rainy day. Anyway, I have this bag of extra grout for the second floor that I keep with the extra tile from the second floor. And then I have the grout for the third floor. We're gonna do the second floor first. This has been in my basement for a few years, so it's pretty hard. But I'm gonna see if I can make it work. I'm just gonna mix it a ton and hope that I can get all those chunks to be broken down. It kind of looks like frosting. I have my bucket of mortar, I have a bucket of clean water, a sponge, and a tile float. I'll take some mortar and plop it down. This is a lot thinner than I would prefer it to be, but that's just because of the way the bag was. I needed to put a lot of water to be able to really pulverize it back into a powder, so it's thinner than it should be, but it'll work. I'll take my tile float and I'm just gonna shove this down, make sure it's getting way down into those cracks. It would probably be a good idea for me to wait a little while for this to set up, but I don't want to. Now that it's all smushed around, I'm gonna take my sponge and get it wet and then wring it out really good. And then I can take my sponge and wipe at a 45-degree angle. And then I'm gonna take another edge of my sponge, wipe the other direction, and then another edge, always going at a 45, and then another edge. And I don't want it to be too wet or it'll get really wet in that joint. So I need to make sure I wring it out really well. And I just keep doing that until I'm happy with how it looks. That mortar will set up pretty quick. In about an hour, I'll come back, and any mortar that's still on the tile, as it dries up, I'll be able to see it better. I'll come back with the sponge and just wipe it off the tile. But I'm just gonna leave that mortar alone for at least 24 hours. I love this purple columbine plant that we have here because a couple years ago, right after we planted it, it disappeared. Someone stole it. And then a few days later, we went for a walk and we found it. It was just thrown into a bush. So we brought it back home, stuck it back in the hole it came out of, and look how good it's doing. I'm so proud of this plant. Anyway, I mixed my mortar up for the third floor, and it's much thicker. This is more how it should be. It doesn't move. I'm gonna do up here the same thing I did downstairs, but you can see that's much thicker. I really have to push this down into that crack. The stuff that I did on the second floor, it kind of just flowed down in there. All right, that looks pretty good. And you might be thinking, well, that doesn't look like the same color as the rest of the grout in here. I took my sponge and I got an area wet and wiped it up really well, and I can see that it is that same color. I've been sawing through a lot of tile in here, and it's created a lot of dust, and a lot of that dust has gathered in the grout lines. The next thing I'm gonna do in here is sheetrocking these walls, and that's also gonna create a lot of dust. So once I'm done with that, then I'll go through, get on my hands and knees and scrub out all these grout lines. And you'll never know I moved the toilet. I'm also going to need to fill this gap between the shower and the tile. But for that, I won't use this grout, I'll use a silicone grout, and I'll show you what that looks like. If you look at the grout that's around the base of the toilet, it looks like the same grout that's in the tile. But instead of being this grout that is oyster gray, it's this grout, which is oyster gray. Since I now know that the third floor has mocha grout, the next time I go to the store, I'll pick up some of this that's the same mocha color. I took the extra tile and grout and stuck it in the back of one of our closets, so if I ever break a tile on the third floor, I can fix it. It's time for me to do something about these walls. The first section I'm going to fill in is this back wall here, and it's kind of a weird shape. I put down some foam to stand on so I don't mess up my shower. And then I'll start measuring this out. And it's going to pop up at about 41 3/4 inches. I made my measurements, now I'm going to go cut it out. The sheetrock that I'm using is blue, sometimes it's green, instead of the white stuff. This blue sheetrock is better to use around a shower somewhere there's going to be a lot of steam and moisture. This is going to hold up better. And I'm using a T-square that I can slide back and forth on here and use that to get really straight square cuts. I measured over 59 3/4, and I'm going to cut straight down to 12 inches. For any cuts going long ways, I'll measure down how far I'm supposed to be down. Here it's 12 inches. I'll put my knife against the T-square at 12 inches and just move the whole thing. Normally I would be making square pieces, but because this is not a square piece, it has that weird jog in it, I have to cut it a little differently. Normally I would cut all the way across, you hit it and it breaks the board. I can't do this on this. So instead I'm doing this the long, slow way where I put my knife in and I make these cuts, and I'll go over that cut again and keep doing this until I go all the way through the board. All right, I've cut all the way through except for on this long cut here, and I should be able to just break it. And that gives me that straight edge. That fits pretty well. You want to drive these nails in so that they're under the surface, and you can fill that with plaster and make this flat again. I started to drive a couple more screws in, and I'm like, where are the studs on this? I tried to line it up with where the nail is up there, because I figured, oh, that's where the stud is. And then it hit me. I built this wall. The studs are 16 inches apart. That's better. I'll eventually add some screws up there, but I don't feel like getting a ladder out right now. So I'm going to try something that should work, but I've never done it before, so we'll see how it goes. I have this metal bar, and it has a hole in it. I'm going to push that against the wall, and I'll put my marker in the hole and move that down the wall and try to keep it as level as possible to try to make a line on this that matches the contour of this brick wall. I'm going to try to cut that line, but it's pretty wonky. That looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. If I did finishing work, I would be so excited to get to a job and see that they did that. And since I am going to be doing the finishing work on this, I guess I'm excited to see what I did. So now I can take my utility knife, come inside the shower, and I can get to it from this side. So all I have to do is cut that paper on this back along that edge, and I can break the rest of that board off. I should be able to just pop this off, and it should break on that line. I'm cutting this so that the sheetrock that touches the shower surround is wrapped like this. It's one of the edge pieces. Doing that all the way around means I end up using more sheetrock, but it gives me a really nice edge that goes against that shower. It's a lot easier to cut these when you score the lines on a full sheet, so I know I have a 20-inch by 40-inch piece there, and then I'm cutting about 4.5 inches off the bottom, but I'm scoring it all before I break any of it. I purposefully cut these a little bit long so that I can just trim the excess off, and that way if the wall's not perfectly square, it doesn't really matter. These corners will line up. Before I close up this last wall, I put this block in there so that I have something to hang the toilet paper roll from. I hate when the toilet paper roll is just attached to sheetrock, and over time it pulls out, and then you have to make the hole bigger and you have to put the plastic plug thing in it. It's just a hassle. I want it to have something to mount into. I'm pretty happy with that. I still have some work to do up in that corner and the post that goes up to the ceiling, but I'm going to do that off camera so I can get it done faster. Remember when I remodeled my bathroom? Well, this is how it looks now. Where that wall is right there is where the toilet used to be. In that spot where the two glass doors meet, that's where the shower used to end. But now it just has so much space. It has both of those rain shower heads and then two sprayers. And a lot of people were saying, oh, you're never going to shower together. We actually shower together most days. While we're at it, let's look at the rest of the house. This is our bedroom. It has kind of like a living room setup as well. This is it from the other angle, and it has like another little nook back there. And we plan to replace that bed at some point with like a day bed or something like that. Sometimes we use that bed for Finley to sleep in our room if we have guests, especially if it's people we don't know too well. Whenever we have a lot of people over, he'll sleep up in our room. Otherwise, he sleeps in his room. I actually built this room. I built those walls. I wired those lights. I even built that little bookshelf. When I built his room, I also built a small guest room. And this is the bathroom for his room and the guest bedroom. I did build these walls. You can see there was like a half a wall there, so when I extended it up, you can see the seam between the two walls. And I did put in that tile. This is my wife's office. I redid this room a little over a year ago when she started working from home. And her desk I actually got from an alleyway, sanded it all down, and repainted it, and it works great. This is the kitchen. This was actually done when we moved in. This is what made us want this house. Here it is from the other direction. I did build those plant shelves and the little cabinet thingies there. My wife loves plants and she just needed plant shelves. This is the living room, and this was done when we moved in. Here it is from the other direction. We moved into this house when we got back from the Peace Corps, and we had a return allowance from the Peace Corps, and we used it to buy furniture. IKEA couches, IKEA chair, IKEA rug, IKEA table. It's just an IKEA showroom. I think this is supposed to be a coat closet, but I turned it into a board game shelf. This is the home gym. I built this in the basement this last winter. Kirsten wanted a place to do pole, and I had to rebuild this whole foundation wall here, and that was awful. We have a small balcony off of our bedroom, and this all needs to be rebuilt. So yeah, that's my house.